Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Armchair Crew Chief. My name is Jordan, and we are moving right along on this NASCAR season. We have already started the playoffs for the Truck Series, and we are 2 races away from starting for the Cup Series as well as the Xfinity Series. So let's go ahead and dive into everything. We have some news to catch up on later on, as well as just some overall racing, good racing, some boneheaded moves in my opinion, some crazy moves in my opinion. But let's go ahead and get started. Truck Series was not with the Cup and Xfinity. They were, for lack of a better term, down the road. They were at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park, so an oval versus the road course that the cars ran. Starting off, we had our, we'll just go ahead and get into our qualifying, our lineup. As we always do, we'll start 5-1. We had Hocevar starting 5th, Rajah Caruth 4th. That was a big surprise. I was happy to see him up there. Corey Heim 3rd, Ty Majeski 2nd, Christian Eckes 1st. He got the pole. Some other notable people we had: Nick Sanchez starting 9th, Zane Smith 8th, Grant Enfinger was starting 6th, Crafton 13th, Stuart Friesen 14th. We also had Haley Deegan. Well, we had Ben Rhodes starting 21st. And then one of the big ones that came out there, Shane Van Gisbergen. I always kind of like to mess up his name. But anyway, SVG was out there. He started 28th. He was one that most people had their eyes on after some of the comments that have come out in the past, where he was talking about wanting to come out here and run races and see what he can do on the Cup circuit, well, NASCAR circuit, we'll say. Haley Deegan started 25th. So let's just go ahead and dive into everything. This is one of those races that unfortunately I wasn't able to watch. I had some other commitments going on, but just seeing what was going on and catching some clips of it, it seemed to be kind of a wild race to an extent. It's going into it. We'll just go ahead and dive right into it. And going into the stages, we had Ty Majeski first, Christian Eckes, Lane Riggs, Carson Hocevar, Zane Smith, your top 5. And then stage 2 was pretty much the same thing. And then at the end of the race, we had, we'll go ahead and go top 10. We had Matty D finishing 10th, Crafton 9th, Heim 8th, Rajah Caruth 7th, William Sawalich 6th, Zane Smith 5th, Hocevar 4th, Lane Riggs 3rd, Christian Eckes 2nd, and Ty Majeski got the win. It seemed to be one of those that ran back and forth with the two guys there, Eckes and Majeski, just going back and forth and seeing what's going on, with them when they're racing and everything. It seems like that 98 truck is going to be the truck to beat. At first, I thought it was going to be, somebody else, but I got a good feeling it's going to be the 98. Don't quote me on this, but I think he's got a good chance of winning just going out and winning the championship. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. They're going to be going to Milwaukee in 2 weeks on a Sunday because we have that Daytona night race Saturday for Cup Series. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. One big surprise that I saw, well, there was 2 of them. I'm really happy to see Rajah Caruth up there running 7th. He's been doing really strong. I mean, him and Nick Sanchez coming out of ARCA have, shown they belong there. If they can translate that moving forward into, a car and not a truck, it'd be interesting to see what happens with that. And then on the other side of that, flip side of that, is Haley Deegan. She went out and she got 2nd in the SRX race, and I understand a lot of guys were wrecking in that SRX race. If you want to kind of qualify her 2nd place running by saying, half the field was out, whatever. She still had the fight and beat Ryan Newman and some of these other guys, and she only lost out to Tony Stewart, who in my opinion shouldn't be running there. But anyway, dirt race with a car, I think that's Haley's bread and butter just based on her background. Unfortunately, the trucks have not been kind to her, to say. She finished 31st. She ended up DNFing really. And again, there's, Dean Thompson back there too. I don't know if they got into it or not. They have a history this year. But I would like to see what Haley can do in a car versus a truck and the handling differences before I count her out for just not being a good enough driver. I think I want to give her one more chance going. Because trucks, some people won't flourish in trucks, and then they'll go and do really well in the cars, and vice versa. So it's interesting to see. The other person that we were looking at is SVG. He started 28th. He ended up finishing 19th. I think that's a pretty good, strong running for him to see how everything went. It seems like he can handle his own. He's learning quick. We also saw that Sunday in the Cup Series race. I'd like to see him more on more ovals to see what he can do, even with the car, if it gets put into an Xfinity race or not. I think that would be interesting to see how all that handles and plays out. I think there's a lot of potential there. I think it's interesting to open it up to Australia and to other parts of the world who think NASCAR is just a bunch of dumb hicks that just turn left. I mean, hopefully we're proving them wrong, but we'll see what happens. As I was saying, they're going to be going to Milwaukee here in 2 weeks. So let's go ahead and dive into our playoff standing. Since we are in the playoffs, our next cutoff is going to be at the 8th spot. At the 8th spot is where we're going to be moving it. So only top 10 made it in to the playoffs. This is our first race in the playoffs. And then we'll be going in through there and catching a few more races. Excuse me. And just moving on through there. Our round of 8 will start at Bristol. So the 14th of September, that is our... So let me back that up. September 8th at Kansas is the last race before we go into the round of 8. So that is our knockout race. And currently right now, we have sitting in the catbird seat is Ty Majeski with the 1 win. He is pretty much locked into this race. And then we have Matt DiBenedetto and Matt Crafton, the Matts, are on the outside looking in. But it is close right now with 1 race done. We have Nick Sanchez 2 points to the good. We have Matt Crafton 2 points below, and Matty D 3 points below. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there and play out. There's a lot of movement there. I mean, Ben Rhodes is sitting 4 points above the cutoff lines in 7th. Grant Enfinger 24 points at 6th. So there's a lot of moving there. We'll see what happens. The races that we have to deal with in here are, we got 2 more races. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We have Milwaukee in 2 weeks that we talked about on Sunday. And then Friday, September 8th at Kansas. That one will be the cutoff race. And then we bump into Bristol in the round of 8. And that round of 8 is 3 races. We're going to be running Bristol, Talladega at the end of September. And then moving into almost the end of October, Miami, and then moving into November, we have Phoenix for the championship. So I get why they do this, NASCAR does, but it kind of stinks too, because I'm sitting there talking about end of September, to the end of October almost for a race. So the truck's got almost a month off, and you got these other guys running 36 races, so it's hit or miss, and I could see some frustration with some guys and going forward, and we'll see what happens. So the Truck Series race, we'll see what happens going forward. I'm thinking right now our guy that's going to be going out there and making this championship is Majeski. I don't see anybody else. Maybe Corey Heim, maybe get him a run for his money. Let Eckes surprise me. He's sitting 3rd. Hocevar, if he can keep that strong running, I think he's in contention. I don't know he has what it takes to win this championship. Maybe next year, could see he's making some good strides and going forward. I think next year might be his chance if he can keep this hot streak running and translate that over to a very solid 2024 season. So that's where we have standing there. As I was saying, Xfinity and Cup did run on the road course at Indianapolis. And it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of got to a snoozer for both races. It was towards the end, especially for the Xfinity Series. It was very frustrating to see the ending of the race. And I'm not even talking about the end of the race. I'm talking about after the race and what happened. So just going in there, just looking at everything, we'll go ahead and go through our 5 up to 1 on our qualifying. We had Daniel Hemrick 5th. We had Austin Hill 4th, Josh Berry 3rd, Ty Gibbs 2nd, and AJ Allmendinger 1st. If you don't already know, those two guys are going to be running probably a lot of road courses in the lower series just because that's their strength, especially in the Xfinity Series. Ross Chastain got 7th in qualifying. Sheldon Creed 9th, just to kind of cover a few more people. Allgaier 13th. Sam Mayer 15th. So going into the stages, Allmendinger got first on the first stage. Sam Mayer 2nd. Hemrick 3rd. Parker Kligerman 4th. Parker had a really strong car. I mean, it was a really good car. I think he could have probably come up and contended if he had a little bit more time. Into stage 2, Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs came in 2nd, so he jumped from 6th to 2nd. And then the end of the race, we'll go our top 10, was Brett Moffitt, Kaz Grala, he had a really good running. Sheldon Creed, 8th, Parker Kligerman 7th. And as I was saying, he was moving up. He was, outside the top 10, if I remember correctly, and he was just being able to pass people, and he had a really strong car. I don't know if it was the fastest car, but he had a really good car going. And then we move on to 6th, Cole Custer, 5th, Justin Allgaier, 4th, Austin Hill, Allmendinger 3rd, Sam Mayer 2nd. Allmendinger had some rough going there. It's almost like his car didn't translate over too much on long runs and going. And then we had Sam Mayer 2nd and Ty Gibbs 1st. We had a few guys, get knocked out. Chastain didn't have had a good going. Josh Williams ended up being the last person finishing running. But overall, Ty Gibbs ran away with this. I think he had over a 5-second lead to Allmendinger, and then Mayer came up and passed Allmendinger to take 2nd. And, it was the Ty Gibbs show for the last 20 laps, I think it was. I could be wrong on that. But it was the most part of the better half of the end of the stage into the end of the race was Ty Gibbs' show. And I'm not a big fan of that. That's one thing I don't like about some of these. And, yeah, you guys know I've already talked about it. And I say I don't care when I talk about Truex doing something like that because he's my main driver. But overall, I like to see a little bit more action. But then again, I'm not going to lie, we didn't catch the first half of the race because we were out getting dinner. And so we kind of missed part of probably where it could have gotten dicey and had more things going on. And I'm not saying I don't want everybody to wreck out or anything like that. But at the same time, I would like to see some more I'd like to see some more contention for the racing. A 5-second lead, especially on a road course, and I'm not really fond of this road course to begin with, Indianapolis. I think they should be running the oval, but that's neither here nor there. We can discuss that in a little bit later. But just going on through that, Ty Gibbs took it. Sam Mayer's your first points collecting finisher, and then Austin Hill, Allgaier, 4th and 5th, Cole Custer 6th, and then Parker Kligerman 7th. So let's go ahead and dive right into that playoff look here and our regular season. We're actually still talking about regular season. So we have Austin Hill sitting there as our regular season leader, John Hunter Nemechek 2nd, Allgaier 3rd. It's going to be tight with these next few races to see if maybe John Hunter can leapfrog Austin Hill or even Allgaier can make some good strides to go out there and get first and get those in the regular season points. I did double check, and I know the Cup Series, and I'm pretty sure with the other ones as well, you get 15 extra points for the regular season champion. So it's no slouch here. I mean, and these are playoff points. It equates to roughly 3 races, if I remember correctly. So that's big points that can help you, and that can make you or break you if you have an off race in between and you're sitting there right below the cutoff line or right above the cutoff line. Those playoff regular season points might help you out and save your bacon. So let's go ahead and keep going further into this, and let's go ahead and go into our playoffs. We are sitting at 12 people getting into this race. Remember, the end of Daytona starts the playoffs, so in 2 weeks. Riley Herbst is sitting at the bottom line. He has 34 points to the good. And then we have Parker Kligerman sitting there as well. He's right there. It's going to be tough because we're looking at points. We're looking at Riley Herbst at 605 and Parker Kligerman at 571. So, doing the math real quick, it's I think Parker's going to need a win to get in. He's 34 points below the cutoff line. And so it's going to be tough. And it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward and see how this will, Parker might be able to do it. Brandon Jones, I don't think so. I think Parker's going to be one of these guys that can jump his way in. Remember the Xfinity Series, a lot more people are going to be making their entry into the playoffs based on points, just because we have a lot of people like a Kyle Busch or Ty Gibbs or, AJ Allmendinger that come into this and win races and just go forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens point-wise. We have John Hunter leading, just amassing the amount of playoff points that he's had, and he's got 5 wins. Austin Hill's got 4 wins, and then we bump into Cole Custer with 2 wins. And so I still think it might be John Hunter's to win. Austin Hill, if you talked to me before, halfway through the season, or halfway through the regular season, I should say, so a few months ago, I would think Austin Hill would have been one of the guys up there. He still is. I don't know. He's kind of cooled off a little bit. So with those regular season points, right now it puts him in first if he gets that regular season championship. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and how this plays out. We do have another road course going forward, as we've talked about. And then we hit Daytona, where anything can go in Daytona. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Cole Custer come out here and win another race. Or, Parker Kligerman, how strong he was at the end of the race Saturday. I wouldn't be surprised if he could come out here and make a good showing and, jump Riley Herbst and get into the playoffs. That's going to be one of those things to see what happens. I think this weekend is going to be interesting and going to be fun to watch and see how everything plays out. So jumping over into the Cup Series now, we did run the road course again. We had a lot of international people. Just to kind of cover some of these international guys, we did have SVG, as everybody know. Brody Kostecki. He finished, I'm not going to go finishing, but he started the race. He ran the race. He's another guy from Australian Supercars. Then we also had some Formula One guys. Kamui Kobayashi, I think is how you say his name. He ran for 2311. And then we also had Jenson Button, Mike Rockenfeller, and Andy Lally. So we had a good international flavor along with our regular Daniel Suarez in there as well. So just going on as we start off, our top 5 were Kyle Busch, Michael McDowell, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez got the pole, and that car looked really strong. Same thing with Chase Elliott. His car looked really strong. I don't fully remember what happened with Tyler Reddick. He kind of fell off. He started falling off a little bit. I think it might have been some of the pit road woes, as Corey LaJoie and his team calls it and theirs. But finishing off the stage, you had good battles going between McDowell and Suarez, with Chase Elliott sitting there right behind him looking at him. And McDowell ended up getting stage points and winning the stage. That was actually his first stage win. And then we go into stage 2. We had Denny Hamlin get the stage win. And don't read too much into that with McDowell second, Suarez third, and Keselowski fourth. So what happened there is Denny and Keselowski did not pit. They just sat there and ran this race. And they pitted after the end of the stages. Now, just a reminder to everybody, road courses, they changed it this year where the stage breaks do not constitute a yellow flag. So they just kept running and green flagged it. So these guys would go in there and run, and then they'd go out and pit. So, as I said, don't read too much into Denny Hamlin taking the stage. And then just going into the race. I mean, this ended up being a really good race. Excuse me. McDowell took the lead, and he held it for a long time. He did fight with Suarez quite a bit. Chase Elliott was in there in the mix fighting as well. Reddick, he kind of got shuffled a little bit further back. I don't think he had a strong enough car as you know, I thought he was going to have. What hurt Suarez? I think Suarez was the car to beat, and that's no downplaying Michael McDowell because he ran a heck of a race and he did really well. If you can't figure it out, McDowell won the race. This is his second race, after Daytona 500. So he, they were joking around. He picks and chooses the big races to win. But anyway, the reason I say that Daniel Suarez had the car to beat and it was tough is because Suarez had a pit road woe, to quote Corey LaJoie. They were sitting there running around to change the tires. Jackman pulled up the car, the left side of the car. The hose got underneath the tire, so when they dropped that car, they had to run back around and lift up that car to move the hose to get back over. So that hurt him a lot. I think he still would have been in the mix. I think he would have been a lot closer to Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott did finish second. Suarez finished third. And just notably, we had SVG finish 10th. So that's a pretty good run for him. Average, he won the Chicago race and he comes out to this other road course and runs 10th. I say that's a win in my book. Larson got 8th, Truex 7th, Alex Bowman 5th. So Ty Gibbs got 12th to cover some of these other guys that are at the top of the playoff standings, or regular season standings, excuse me. Denny Hamlin 19th, William Byron, he just did not have it this week. His car was just rough, and he ended up getting caught and failed inspection 3 times. So he ended up 14th, but he failed inspection 3 times, had a pass-through penalty, and it was just one of those it wasn't his day. Some people would say maybe they're catching up to Hendrick now, catching what he's doing to cheat and make him faster. I don't know. I mean, everybody tries to cheat and push the limits. I don't know what exactly on his car caused him to fail 3 times, but he did pass the 4th time. So that handles there. And then moving on to our playoff standings here with the Cup Series. Our regular season, we have Truex, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Christopher Bell is our top 4. Byron's pretty much knocked himself out of getting the regular season. If you ask me, he's 104 points below Truex. Truex does have the lead. He's 60 points above Denny Hamlin. So I think it's going to be a battle between those two guys. Watkins Glen is a Toyota strong, with the exception, I would say. I don't even want to put Kyle Larson in there, but Chase Elliott, I think that's the only real chance Chase Elliott has to win and get in. As you heard me last week, Denny Hamlin came out and said that, Chase Elliott's going to get in and, so on points. Well, that proved to be wrong. And, I don't know why he said that. But going forward, let's go ahead and dive into our playoff rankings. So we have number 1, we have Truex. He has the least amount of points right now, but they're giving him the regular season points, I think. I could be wrong on that. since he did get more points coming into the race and finished a lot better than William Byron. William Byron is sitting second, and that's purely just because he's had 4 wins versus Denny Hamlin, who has 2 wins. And stage wins, he has 7 versus 5 that Denny has. The thing that's keeping Truex up there is he's got 3 wins, as well as more top 5s, more top 10s, and less DNFs than William Byron. He only has 1 DNF. So sitting out of the top 5, Truex has the least amount of DNFs. And we have Kyle Busch sitting there at 5th with 5 DNFs. So let's go ahead. As I was saying, you guys need to focus on that regular season battle. I think it's probably going to be decided Sunday, but with it being Daytona coming up Saturday after this week, so 2 Saturdays from now, we're going to have a regular season champion. And I think it's either going to be Truex or, I think Denny Hamlin might bump up and do it. I don't think Byron has a chance, but let him prove me wrong. So now looking at the bottom, we have a new winner. So we're dropped out and we're down to 3 people that can point their way in. That can change again starting, if Chase Elliott wins at Watkins Glen, then we're down to 2 people. And we're looking right now at, I'm pretty sure that Kevin Harvick's going to be locked in, but looking at the points now, Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski are so stinking close. They are 2 points away from each other in here. And then you have Bubba Wallace. I think he's out. I don't think he's going to make it he's not going to make it if somebody wins unless he wins. But he's 28 points above the cutoff line. Then you have Suarez, 28 points below. Ty Gibbs is sitting there at 49. I think he's out of the question. I think we're looking at, Suarez and a Wallace battle for this last playoff spot. And I think you're going to see it play out. Not so much probably at Watkins Glen, unless Suarez can come out and win. But if they keep like this and we have a repeat winner at Watkins, I think the battle to watch is going to see what Bubba does or what Daniel does at Daytona. Because Daytona's so high-paced, fast-paced, anything can go. You don't know what's going to happen. It's a big question mark with that super speedway. It would be interesting to see what plays out with that. So that's pretty much covers our racing. And going into our news, one of the big things that happened is Todd Gilliland and Michael McDowell have been renewed for next year for Front Row Motorsports. So our 34 car is going to still have Michael McDowell in it next year. And, let me backtrack here. One thing I forgot to even cover on this racing that happened Sunday, it was pretty clean. I think we only had 3 caution laps, and that was Joey Logano's fault. Joey Logano, I don't know what happened with him. He tried to video game it where he was sending in it way too hot, locking up the brakes, sliding in, hitting people, knocking them out, rearing. Joey Logano was the sole reason for the cautions, and he had a lot to do with some of the wreck cars out there. It just wasn't his day. So I wanted to kind of cover that and fill that in. Michael McDowell, when he was running, NBC caught Channel 2 radio of his spotter and crew chief talking. His crew chief, really high stress, sitting there yelling at spotters, "Got to get these guys out of the way." Not using those words, but close to it. And once again, you have Jeff Burton up there. Oh, they need to keep their mouth shut, and hopefully Michael McDowell can't hear this because it's going to stress him out. The dude was a racer. That's why I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. And Junior kind of corrected him twice, and he didn't listen the first time either. He's like, that's probably on Channel 2. They're not going to say that around the driver. And it took like 3 times for Jeff Burton to be like, oh, yeah, it's got to be on Channel 2. It's like, I don't know where the brain gap, I don't know, that's a bad term. But I feel like his knowledge for racing, besides handling of the car, goes out the window whenever he's sitting there calling a race. Because there's some really ignorance. We brought him up last week when he was talking about Michigan in the rain and complaining about that. To, now where he's like Oh, they need to not be saying that around McDowell. He needs to have a focus and do the racing. It's like, come on, guy. You raced, your son races, and you weren't that far removed from this style of racing. So I think that plays. I don't know what's going on with it. I mean, because you have Steve Letarte, and he says some really stupid stuff, and he talks a lot, and he continues talking. But I don't think he can top what Jeff Burton has said the past few weeks. So I just wanted to add that information in there. I thought that was some points of emphasis on, what's going on, because everybody wants to rag on Fox on their broadcast. They both have their flaws. I think Fox has the issue where you got Clint Boyer, who wants to show something and can really talk about it. Whenever he gets into something, he can explain it really well. And whoever's in the truck broadcasting or directing doesn't pay attention to him and just cuts off to other things. Whereas if you see in Sunday's race, Steve Letarte was talking about the hose underneath the wheel, and whoever was in the broadcast directing, they rewound it and they followed him. And that's what Fox needs. If they can butt heads and mash out something to equal out, I think that would be awesome. But, give or take. Another thing I have to pick out with NBC that I did not like is they did not show qualifying for the Cup Series. They just flat out didn't show it. And that's what happens when you have all these sports on NBC and you get rid of NBC Sports Network and you want to show Chicago Fire 500 times on the USA Network where you're going to show racing. So, that was my bone to pick with NBC this past week. So going forward, as I was mentioning, Front Row Motorsports drivers have been cemented in for next year. We have Michael McDowell coming back, and then we have Todd Gilliland coming back. That's some big news. Other news that came out was the Noah Gragson ended up requesting a release out of his contract, which, it sounded like something was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And then he just flat out said, I want to get out of this thing. I don't want to be, and I get it. We've had discussions putting tinfoil hat back on where, Jimmy Johnson comes from Hendrick Motorsports, and it's kind of, just look at how Larson was versus now. Look at how Chase Elliott is. Look how William Byron, Alex Bowman. There's not a lot of personality. There's not, they do a lot of stuff off the track and do a lot of things. Look at what happened with Chase Elliott. Look at what happened with Alex Bowman. It's one of those things that I think they have a strict, almost like a Penske. Penske doesn't allow facial hair during the regular season. They have to wear, polo shirts, that kind of thing, a culture type thing. Well, I think one of the things that happened was Legacy. It was trying to curb Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson's was one of the top guys. People liked him, his personality. He was different, and he was silly and fun. He brought something different to the racetrack. He's the one that started the big goofy hats. He did it at Daytona with Wendy's. So just to see that, that's a tinfoil hat theory. I also heard that there was a guy that, he goes out there and finds things from people that he doesn't like, and he goes out and digs up dirt just to get them removed. So, I heard that's what happened with Gragson, because this post came from 3 years ago. Why didn't Junior Motorsports do anything about it? Why didn't anything like that happen? So that's some food for thought on that. And going forward, I don't know. And then the last thing that the bone pick that I didn't like about this weekend, and I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth, guys, so just keep with me, was the end of the Xfinity race. Ty Gibbs comes out and wins, and he sits there and he does a burnout at the end, and the guys are still doing their cool down laps. Like, he was 5 seconds ahead, so he goes and he gets in, 4, 3, 2. And he goes out and does a burnout right near turn 1. I think that was silly. Then during the cool down laps, he goes further down and does another burnout and halfway through the track. And almost, could have caused some guys to wreck because he put up a cloud of smoke. So I think that's just ignorance on his part, and I didn't like it one bit. And, you can tell me to get over myself, but I think that was just stupid. Burn out, celebrate, whatever. But to do it while people are still around you on cool down laps, not cool. So we had that big change, or we had that going on. We had some big changes to the race on Saturday and Sunday. They changed the restart zone. I thought it was still going to cause a wreck fest. It looked like it kind of cleaned it up some. I mean, besides Joey Logando going full send into there and locking up the tires and sliding in and hitting people, it cleaned it up, the restarts. The other thing that you saw a lot was people just, hitting each other and spinning people out, whether it was frustration or what. I don't know. I'd call that racing because nobody got hurt, nobody wrecked out, but you had some beating and begging, rubbings racing. So you had that come out. And then there's also these rumors coming out now when you look at what's going on. I mean, NASCAR's got a 2-day tire test going on at Indianapolis, at the oval now, mind you, oval, not the road course. And so an email that put out that Indianapolis had kind of hints towards we're going to oval next year, which I like. I don't like the road course in Indianapolis. If you want to run a road course, with the exception of maybe the Roval, just because it happened, I like these road course racetracks that are designed for racetracks. You ask somebody else, you ask my son, he wants to see Daytona road course a lot more. And I can see that. I get my feel on that with the Rolex 24 at the beginning in February, beginning of the year. But, going forward, I could see that happening. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Not a lot of big things going on, not a lot of stressy stuff, but let's go ahead and dive into what's going to happen at the end of the week, and we'll cap off this podcast with that. So Friday, we're going to have our ARCA race at 6 Eastern on FS1. MRN's got the radio call. And as always, all of this will be on SiriusXM. Then we move into practice and qualifying for Xfinity on Saturday. Not on TV, not on radio. So good luck if you really want to watch Xfinity. Then we move into, that's at 10:30 and 11 Eastern on Saturday. Then we move into the Cup Series practice and qualifying, 12:30, 1:30. That will be televised on USA and on MRN. And then you move into the Xfinity race starting at 3:30 on Saturday. That will be on USA and MRN. And then Sunday, 3 o'clock, we have the Go Bowling at the Glen. That will be on USA Network, MRN, and SiriusXM. So that's what we got going on. This one's going to be a good race. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. See if we get another shakeup in what goes on with the season. And we're nearing the end of nearing the end. So let's see what happens. Hey guys, I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Don't forget Watkins Glen on Sunday and Saturday, and go out and have a good one.